All right. You've learned the pronunciation of the letters. Most of the letters are pronounced like they are in English. There's a few, such as J or the J, which are pronounced differently. All right. And that goes along with the soft G or K. When it's soft, like in English, it sounds like an English J. When it's soft in Spanish, it's going to sound like a Spanish J, or the J, which is sound a lot like an English H. And there's a few other letters like the double L and stuff like that that are a little different than English. You learn how to do those, you pronounce every syllable in Spanish, and you're doing great. But you got to learn about the stress, okay? There are 4 rules I want you to know for using accent marks. 3 of those are rules for the stress, all right? The accent marks in Spanish are our friends. They tell us how to pronounce the Spanish word, all right? So if you think about a word in English like the word suspect, that can be pronounced 2 different ways, suspect or suspect. One of them is a noun, you know, like the police have identified the suspect. Another is a verb. I suspect he did it. Well, if English had accent marks, they'd put an accent mark on the first syllable or the second syllable, and when you're reading it, you know if it's the noun or the verb form of suspect or suspect, right? So that's what the accent marks do in Spanish. Now here's the rules for stress. The rules for stress are, if the word ends in a vowel or the consonants N or S, you're always going to stress the penultimate syllable. I know, that's a big word, penultimate, all right? It simply means second to last. Ultimate means last, penultimate means second to last. So you're always going to stress the second to last syllable. And if it ends in a vowel, an N or an S, you stress the second to last syllable. It's that simple. So every word that you see without an accent mark, if it ends in a vowel, an N or an S, the stress is on the second to last syllable. Take the days of the week, for instance. Lunes, martes, all right? Those are Monday, Tuesday. Other days of the week, such as jueves, viernes, and domingo, you stress the second to last syllable. If it's a 2-syllable word, you stress the first syllable. A 3-syllable word, you stress the second syllable because it's also the second to last. A 4-syllable word, you'd be stressing the third syllable, which is going to be the second to last. All right, but there's 2 days of the week, miércoles and sábado. It's not sábado, it's sábado. So there's an accent mark on the first syllable of that 3-syllable word so that you know to pronounce it sábado and not sábado. There's an accent mark on the first syllable of the 3-syllable word for Wednesday, miércoles, instead of miércoles, all right? So if the accent mark wasn't there, you'd pronounce it miércoles. If the accent mark's there, you pronounce it miércoles. That's the accent mark. First rule, words that end in a vowel, N or S, stress the final syllable. All right, next rule. Words that end in a consonant, other than the 2 I mentioned before, N or S, words that end in a consonant, other than the 2 I mentioned before, N or S, you stress the final syllable. All right? So if you look at a word like hogar, which means home or hearth, all right? You look at a word like lugar, all right, which means place. And those are pretty much only the few verbs that end in AR, few words that end in AR that are actually nouns instead of verbs. But if you look at words, any verb in its infinitive form that ends in R, all right, unless it has an accent mark somewhere else, words like tamal, which means tamale in English, tamal, it ends in an L. You stress the final syllable of those words, all right? Okay, now, rule 3. If you don't follow rule 1 and 2, you have to use an accent mark. I bet you already guessed what that was. If you don't follow rule 1 and 2, you have to use an accent mark. All right, and rule 4 is accent marks are used on single syllable words sometimes. Well, why in the world would they be used on single syllable words? That's because Spanish spelling is so tight, there's not multiple ways to spell words. So some of the single syllable words may have other meanings, like say and say. Say with an accent mark means it's a pronoun. It's the impersonal pronoun for one, like one must follow the rules, or one shouldn't speed, or one ought to pay their taxes, or one ought to go vote. The impersonal pronoun one. And with the accent mark, it means I know. Say. You'll say, I know. All right. See. See. With an accent mark, it means yes. See. It's the opposite of no. See. Without an accent mark, see. See means if. All right. Tu. Tu. Pronounced the same way. When you're reading it with an accent mark, okay, it means you. Tu. Without an accent mark, it means your. That's spelled Y-O-U-R, not Y-O-U''R-E, and not, certainly not, you are in English, all right? So without an accent mark, it means you. With an accent mark, it means you are. All right, so there's the 4 rules for accents and stress. You need to know them. The accent marks are our friends. First rule, you don't need an accent mark on words that end, if you don't have an accent mark, well, let's say it like that. If you don't have an accent mark on words that end in a vowel or an N or an S, you stress the second to last syllable. If you don't have an accent mark on words that end in a consonant, you stress the last syllable. If you break rules 1 and 2, you need an accent mark. So the accent mark is going to be on any rules, any word that doesn't follow rules 1 or 2. And single syllable words doesn't change the sound of them, it just changes the meaning of them when you're reading the written form. All right, for on single syllable words. That's it. 4 rules for stress and accents. Thanks for watching. You're watching your teacher, Mr. Lewis, Spanish class.